After a 1-year hiatus, the Open Championship is back once again this year, heading out to Royal St. George's Golf Club for the 2021 Open Championship. It's going to be a fun one. We're going to break things down from a DFS perspective and let you know who you should target for your DFS contests on FanDuel. Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com. Joined here, as always, by Brandon Gadula. He is the managing editor for numberFire.com. Brandon, the Open Championship is coming up, teeing off on Thursday. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I always like the Open Championship, not the British Open, although I will sprinkle that in a little bit here and there, but it's specifically not the British Open, but it's just a different style of golf than what we typically get to see. And frankly, especially coming off like the John Deere, I'm just like, give me something a little different at this point. So this is going to be a really tough test. We'll break down the course, but Royal St. George's is tough even by Open Championship standards. So I'm always a fan of that.
By something different, I hope you don't mean a non-Lucas Glover winner, because we are pro Lucas Glover wins on the Heat Check. So
True.
Something
Very
different.
True.
A different route to Lucas Glover winning is what we want, right?
I mean, for the bit, sure, but I think it's
the truth.
I think it's Xander week.
I
always think it's Xander week.
I was going to say, we've had this conversation once or twice.
Too many times. You put anyone point to me one reason not to like Xander Schauffele in a major, aside from the fact that he hasn't won. I don't really know what there would be to say.
I think that I've probably picked Xander more often than you for our win picks in
probably
the podcast, so I can't actually trash talk it.
I try to not do it as often as I actually want to.
And usually he makes a lot of sense, so I just do it. And I'm like, whatever, I'll take this if Brandon's not going to.
Yeah, it's just because it makes sense to pick.
It does. And we're going to let you know what other picks make sense throughout the podcast for today. It is at Royal St. George's Golf Club, 7,211 yards and a par 70. This is the 15th time that Royal St. George's has hosted the Open. The most recent time was back in 2011. That was not the first time. But
no, I thought you were going to go back to 1890 whatever.
Yeah, it's been a hot second since the first one. But because it was back in 2011, we don't have course history, but we do know how the course will play, given that long sample. We do know who has done well in previous Opens. We'll talk about that in a bit, but worth noting here that the cut rule is a bit different for this week. The top 70 plus ties will make the cut after the first two rounds. There isn't a secondary cut, so a little bit extra wiggle room there, but a lot of golfers in the field for this week, so still difficult to identify golfers who will make it. Luckily, in a major, there tend to be, some guys who are not true contenders to make the cut. That helps us a little bit at least. So, Brandon, when you're looking at both this course and looking at the Open, et cetera, what stands out to you as being things we need to emphasize when trying to identify who we want to utilize for this week?
Yeah, I mean, I try to dig as deep as I could, just because we have to. We also didn't get an Open Championship last year. The courses will. I mean, it's obviously an event that rotates courses, and yes, they will play differently, but it's not completely drastically different all the time. So we can kind of take an event form look at things, but. If you look at the past 5 event winners of the Open Championship, their scores have been 15 under, 8 under, 12 under, 20 under, and 15 under. But the past 5 at Royal St. George's have been 5 under, 1 under, 13 under, +2, and 4 under. So based on that, you think plays tougher and that there's more stats to back that up. The average winning score across all Open Championships since 1980 has been 9 under par, but at Royal St. George's, it's been 4.2 under par, which makes it the second toughest venue that's hosted multiple times. I think actually just in general, even if it had one, if that even exists. But Carnoustie has hosted 3 times. The average winning score there is 3 under. So, Carnoustie gets a lot of renown for being very tough, but Royal St. George's has been extremely difficult as well. And back in 2011, when we saw the Open Championship at this course, We saw that scrambling, unsurprisingly, among basically all the non-shot link stats. So you think greens and regulation, driving distance, those like basic stats that we all know, but that's all we have for opens. Scrambling was really important. It correlated strongest with stroke differential in that 2011 Open Championship, followed closely by greens and regulation. As far as the driving stats go, we're basically looking at driving it well, whatever that means for you specifically. Driving distance correlated by far stronger with stroke differential in that event than just fairways hit, like driving accuracy percentage. However, good drive rate doubled distance alone. Now, greens and regulation are going to be notoriously difficult to pick up this week, but that doesn't mean that we downplay irons, I don't think. I've kind of seen people assume, well, it's going to be wedges, putter, if you need to scramble. And that's true. And you need your guys to scramble. But hitting greens and regulation is not a bad thing. So we don't want to downplay iron play too much. So as always with every single major, I want positive marks in all four categories. So I want it off the tee. This week, I'm looking at either good drive rate or strokes gained off the tee. There's probably a lot of overlap there. Strokes gained approach to the number one, but we want those irons. Scrambling or strokes gained around the green. I'm going to prefer strokes gained around the green because it doesn't factor in putting conversion, but I also want strokes gained putting on bent grass splits if you have that, but then also bogey avoidance. So I want it all, and I want bogey avoidance because you're not going to make a whole lot of birdies, and you're going to get a significantly higher portion of your FanDuel points this week from just finishing well. So it's not about birdies, it's about finishing well, which you're probably going to do by avoiding bogeys.
I wound up going with around the green as well over scrambling for the same reasons you mentioned. But also, if you look back at, I tested the past two opens, so not at Royal St. George's, but like pretty similar in the way that they play in terms of being difficult. And scrambling there just didn't test super well relative to around the green. It popped more than it usually does, like obviously, but it was still very much around the green reigning supreme there. And I think we can understand pretty logically why that'd be the case. So I wound up going around the green as well. As far as the off the tee play, I did go strokes gained off the tee as opposed to good drives gained. A lot of that was due to, if you go to Data Golf and you look at which stats
their course
drive the majority of scoring, and it was both distance and accuracy were like equal to normal. So that's why I wanted to go with strokes gained off the tee as opposed to good drives gained, because I do want a little bit of that juice from distance. And we have seen distance help in previous opens. So that was kind of the tiebreaker for me is recent opens, distance has given you some juice for sure. And the fact that accuracy and distance both played equal relative to normal, that's what pushed me towards going with strokes gained off the tee as opposed to good drives gained.
Yeah, I mean, you just want your golfers to have some semblance of a driver. You can just kind of hit it out there and still be fine. Like that is okay so long as you scramble well enough. It's not going to make it necessarily easier. And with the greens and regulation being super difficult, I think it was, anytime you see like a really good stat on Twitter, that's probably from Justin Ray. But I think like something to the effect of Royal St. George's has like the lowest greens and regulation percentage among like the recent courses that hosted the Open. So it's going to be really hard to hit greens and regulation. So you have to scramble, you have to get up and down and save par. But again, the game plan should not be hit it, hit your driver and then hit it somewhere near the green. It should still be who can actually gain some greens and regulation on the field. That's still going to be important. So, we say it every time we have a major, just no holes in your game, which sounds boring, but it's the truth.
Yeah. And I think that it's just more important to try to avoid or reduce the number of routes to implosion. That's kind of the way that I want to look at it is I want there to be fewer ways this guy can totally skewer me. And that is by finding well-rounded golfers. And I think there are some guys who fit that pretty well for this week at not outrageous salaries. We'll talk about those and talk about golfers who have done well recently at the Open as well. But first, the 2021 NBA Finals are in full swing, and FanDuel and Taco Bell are teaming up to add an extra layer of excitement to the action. Introducing the FanDuel Sportsbook and Taco Bell NBA Finals Comeback Bonus. The terms are simple. All you have to do is head to FanDuel Sportsbook before tip-off and place a $25+ pre-lock money line bet on either team to win. If the team you bet on overcomes a halftime deficit to win, you will be eligible to receive a $10 bonus in FanDuel site credit. You'll win your bet and you'll earn a bonus. Now that's more ways to win thanks to our friends at Taco Bell. Users must opt into the promo in order to be eligible for the bonus payout. Eligible every NBA Finals game until the bonus hits. Must be 21 plus and present in Colorado, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, or West Virginia. Bonus issued as a non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. Max bonus $10. Restrictions apply. See full terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Colorado, 1-800-522-4700. In Iowa, 1-800-BETS-OFF. In Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. For confidential help in Michigan, 1-800-270-7117. In Tennessee, call the Red Line, 1-800-889-9789. Or in West Virginia, visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net. Let's take a look here at golfers who have done well in past Opens. And the reason we want to look at this is because, like you said, there is an overlap between these courses, despite the fact they are not the same course. And also it helps that the field will always be tough. So we do want to at least look at golfers who have done well in the past at Open. So Brandon, when you're looking at that, which golfers stand out as being golfers who have tested well in these tough conditions in the past?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to list out some names. Usually we identify a few golfers and dig into them a little bit more, but I think maybe for the purposes of how kind of general this is, I'm just going to mention the guys who are top 10 in strokes gained at the Open with at least 9 rounds over the past 5 iterations of the Open. So not looking at golfers with 1 or 2 starts at the Open, but Jordan Spieth, Henrik Stenson, Rory McIlroy gained an average of 2.5 strokes per round in the Open in this sample, which is pretty stellar. Tony Finau, 2.1. Don't forget about that name this week, despite the 2 missed cuts entering. Brooks Koepka, unsurprisingly, 1.9. And then 5 golfers at 1.7 strokes gained per round. Some bigger names that will kind of get some attention. Jason Day, Justin Rose, Phil Mickelson, so 3 older golfers who have historically been just good major players overall. Xander Schauffele, younger player who is fantastic at majors, and Alex Noren as well. And Noren's salary is only $8,600 on FanDuel. I like him a lot as a value play, but that's the top 10 in strokes gained at the past 5 Opens. Golfers with a made cut in each of the past 5 Opens. This list is Jordan Spieth, Webb Simpson, Lee Westwood, Ricky Fowler, Justin Rose, Danny Willett, Matt Kuchar, Henrik Stenson, and golfers who made a cut, maybe didn't play all 5, but made every cut that they started in. Alex Noren, Brooks Koepka, Tony Finau, and Xander, and I like all of them this week.
I want to ask you more of like a process-based thing, and you're talking about the guys who have done well in Opens. How penalizing is it for you if a golfer does not have good history? And that's not like Abraham Ancer was very young the last time he was at an Open, stuff like that. Like that, who cares? But like for someone like DJ who does not have good course history, there are good history in Opens. And obviously there are other reasons not to like DJ, but like on the broad scale, how much do you ding someone if they haven't done well historically in an event like this?
It's a tiebreaker situation for me. Generally, when I look at things like event history, so someone, it's like an inside joke at this point, but I like Xander a lot. But you can make the case for tons of other golfers near Xander's salary, Jordan Spieth as well. Like these golfers kind of have the right current form and have done well at Opens, as compared to someone like, Justin Thomas, a little more middling in terms of Open history. Bryson DeChambeau hasn't had a lot of success necessarily at Open. So whenever we look at most majors, we talk an extra amount of time on the podcast because you have to like nitpick between these guys who have almost the same exact cases to be made. So it's really more of a tiebreaker That being said, golfers like Colin Morikawa, Victor Hovland, Scotty Scheffler, who don't actually have Open starts yet, I'm not necessarily off of them just because they haven't played. So I don't want to sort by the best golfers at the Open and just play those golfers.
So what you're saying is it's not as like from the debutante perspective, it's not like a thing like the Masters. Like it's not where a situation where if they haven't been there, you are going to be very hesitant with them, whereas we are at Augusta.
Not for me as much. Maybe that's dumb because it is a very specific type of golf. But Data Golf, of course, has a tool that shows this, how important how important course history is at certain events. And, the Open's up there, but it's not necessarily an outlier like Augusta or like Bay Hill or some of these other courses. So, I mean, if guys have experience on the European tour, if they have even, one start, that's fine. But, someone like Morikawa, he's not going to be the best course fit because he's better with the irons than the wedges. But if Morikawa just hits more greens than everyone else, that's still an advantage. So I'm not crossing anyone off just based on their event history at the Open.
Good to know, because I'll be talking about Paul Casey later on in the show for today. And Paul Casey, a guy who is definitely in good form, and something we'll talk about in a second. So let's transition now to the current form section here and talk about golfers who have notable form, whether it be good or bad. And Brandon, I'm not sure which side of this Jon Rahm winds up on. Is it just noteworthy form, or is it good current form? You're going to have to educate me. But Jon Rahm, the favorite in this field for some reason, I am unclear as to why. So educate me as why Jon Rahm would possibly be dubbed a favorite for this event.
I think it's officially time that we keep an eye on Jon Rahm. And
okay, good. Okay, course. Monitors. We've alerted the media that Jon Rahm might be good at golf.
It just might be time. It might be his time for Rahm to really step it up. But I know nobody needs us to tell them to play Jon Rahm on FanDuel, but I think it's really important that we go over Rahm specifically because of just how good he's been lately. And not just how good he's been lately, but how good we know he is long-term. He has historically been, since I've been tracking this stuff for 2+ years, just at the top, if not the top of, an adjusted strokes gained database. So Rahm over the past 20 rounds across all tours has a true strokes gained average, which is Data Golf's adjusted strokes metric, of 3.1 per round. No other golfer in this field is better than 2.2, which is Victor Hovland, who I also like this week. But that's almost a full stroke per round better than the next hottest golfer in a really recent sample. That's really hard to kind of wrap your head around. I track a very similar metric with some recency adjustments as well, and it's rare to see a golfer get up past 2.2 or so for a larger sample. Even in smaller samples like this, it happens, but this is as hot as we really have seen. And if you look at the actual finishes, we could be looking at 3 straight wins. He was 7th at the Scottish Open last week when he gained 3.13 strokes tee to green with nobody else above 2.5, and lost 0.5 putting. So he's basically gone 8th at the PGA Championship. Would have been a win at the Memorial if he didn't have to withdraw because of a positive COVID test. Won the US Open. Had he been even neutral with the putter, could have had another win. So that could be 3 straight wins that we have for Rahm. And the thing with FanDuel, I cannot bet anyone in a full field at, what is he, plus 750 now. But at a salary of 12,300, that's not shifting based on how hot he is necessarily. That's where he's set. But I think everything starts with Jon Rahm this week and how we feel about him. So what are your initial thoughts on Rahm and how much of your lineup exposure will be tied to Jon Rahm?
I mean, you can get to him pretty easily because there are a lot of golfers in the mid 8,000 range who are really good. And I think that's interesting. So I feel like there's really no need to get off him from a salary perspective. You're talking about I bring this up a lot, but I talk about this for NASCAR, find the best way to get a financial exposure to someone. If you're playing DFS or betting, just find the best route. If you don't want to pay plus 750 for Rahm, just use him in DFS. And I think you can do that very easily this week. The one downside with Rahm is that it is a high salary, and I really like a balanced approach for this week because we have some awesome golfers in the 10,000 range and the high 9,000 range, and I want to be in that range pretty often. If you do Rahm, you can get back up there, but you're kind of, it's getting a little hairier for sure. So I think that for Rahm, we hear a lot of times where people don't want to be even weight with the field on a golfer. I'm actually pretty comfortable being even with Rahm this week, like 40%, I think. And I know that like that's not going to give me an edge there, but I will have an edge elsewhere. I can guarantee you that. Like I will be overweight on other people, just not him specifically, because I think that like he deserves to be where he's at. He deserves to be as popular as he'll be, but I also do want to have enough rosters with different construction where I'm deviating from there to benefit in case Rahm doesn't win. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. I think I want to be even with the field on Rahm and deviate elsewhere. What about for you?
Yeah, I mean, in the event Rahm doesn't win, which sounds like a lock at this point, but my win simulations have him at 8%. So 92% of the time he does not win this week. That seems very fair for where he is. That's
8% is really high in a field this tough and this big.
It is. And next up is 5.5%. So it's a pretty big jump over second place. I think you probably know who that is, but it's Xander, just because the long-term form is kind of unmatched aside from Rahm. But I think this might be a good time to talk actual draft percentages from recent majors quickly. Sure. I pulled the past 3 for this year. And looked at FanDuel draft percentages. Only 2 golfers got above 30%. That was Justin Thomas and Jordan Spieth, but that was at the Masters, which is a smaller field, so it's kind of an outlier there. And then we saw Daniel Berger at 29.7% at the PGA Championship. So really no golfer in either the PGA or the US Open was above 30%. Now Rahm was 29.5% at the US Open and did come through, and he's super hot right now. So you said 40%. That could be about right, but around 35% is what we're looking at. So, sometimes we get really weak fields, and, we saw Bryson over 50% just 2 weeks ago. We're not going to get that high with Jon Rahm, but there are plenty of ways to pivot. But I think you're right where I will naturally just fall somewhere over or underweight on Rahm. I will lean underweight just because I know how unlikely it is for him actually to win, even though it feels kind of like a lock. But, even in a tournament, I don't think we fade Jon Rahm outright.
Yeah, I think that'd be misguided for sure. But I think that 40% is fair. If it's over or under, I don't really care. I think that's probably where I just want to wind up, because I can be 60% of my rosters to benefit in case something does go awry there, and I think that's enough for me. So I feel good about that. If I have 60% of my rosters that are like skewing more heavily towards balance, I'll feel good about that heading into Thursday morning. So let's move now to Louis Westhuizen, and if it's not Rahm we're talking about for current form, I think that Westhuizen probably has to be number 2 on that list, because it's not often you see a guy going for a 3rd consecutive runner-up in a major, and Louis either trying to continue that or buck that, I guess, depending on how optimistic he wants to be. But either way, he's worth discussing here. Louis was runner-up at the PGA Championship and the US Open. He gained a combined 10.8 strokes on approach in those 2 events. He actually lost 1 stroke off the tee, but he made up for it with his irons and his short game, which is what we want once again for this week too. There have been other big showings in this span as well. Louis was 8th at the Valspar, 6th at the WGC Workday, and we've seen Westhuizen perform well in the Open Championship. He was runner-up in 2015. He's been top 30 each of the past 2 playings. So there's definitely a high cost in Louis Westhuizen at 11-1, but I think it's a fair salary. I don't think it's outrageous that he's there, but Brandon, he's not the value that he was heading into the past 2 majors. So what's your view on Westhuizen this time around for the Open?
Totally fine. I don't think I'm going to get there personally, just because we are creeping into like territory where he's at a higher salary than someone like Colin Morikawa, Victor Hovland, who it makes sense. So it's really unfair to say it that way. But I mean, you want to talk about someone who we're not on team like Finau and Xander can't win, but with Louis, I mean, it feels like maybe he can actually win a major. But like I'm not going to talk anyone out of Louis based on all the stats. Everything lines up to make him a fine play. I think there's just something in my brain that's like, that's a high salary for Louis Oosthuizen.
Yeah, and the other thing too is there are golfers right around that. You mentioned Morikawa, but like it's not just him. Hovland is 10-9. I love Patrick Cantley. Shocker, he's 10-7. I am very in on that as well. So the fact that we're not in on West Hazen is not because we're skeptical of what he's done. It's because he's finally appropriately salaried, and that allows us to deviate elsewhere. I think that's what it comes down to for me with West Hazen this week. Is I've got other options. I'll use them, and I mean, it'd be fun to watch him do it again, just not in my lineups for this week. Let's move now to my guy, Paul Casey, who you viciously stole. However, I will talk about him later. So you talk about Paul Casey right now, and I'll talk about him later on. What are you seeing with Casey's form right now?
So I was actually looking for a golfer in like this mid-range salary between like 9,000 and like 10.5 who had really good recent form. And I mean, they're like, I'm not saying that all these golfers are in bad form, but to talk about like in an outlier standpoint, there weren't a whole lot necessarily, aside from maybe Scotty Scheffler, who I'm going to talk about later. So I didn't want to talk about him twice. And I actually looked, I didn't realize you had Paul Casey. I tried to avoid this snafu, but I think Paul Casey's in a really great spot at a salary of 10,300, which is, you want to kind of maybe compare that to Louis. It's an 800 savings in terms of salary, which goes a long way. And the recent form, amazing. 21st at the Valspar, which is Paul Casey's event. 4th at the PGA Championship. 6th at the Porsche European Open. 7th at the US Open. And 36th at the Travelers, while virtually not gaining strokes putting in any of them, which is not the most surprising thing for Paul Casey. But the irons, the driver, even the wedges are all super hot right now. And putting alone is not going to get you a win at an Open Championship. It's going to be part of it. You're going to need to save par, which is the one drawback with Casey. But Casey ranks second in Data Golf's true strokes gained tee to green metric over the past 20 rounds. He is 4th in approach in that sample, 10th off the tee, 25th around the green. It's really hard to like knock Paul Casey at that balanced salary. And it should work. That game should work at the Open, although that has not historically been the case for Casey. He's been 74th, cut 11th, 51st, and 57th at the past 5 Opens, but does have 4 top 25s, 12 made cuts in 17 tries at the Open. So current form's great. Sounds like, unsurprisingly, you're in on Paul Casey, but maybe talk to me about this like 96 to 10.5-ish range and see where Casey lands for the both of us.
Well, I wanted to ask you about the Open stuff because like if you look back at his past Open, I don't want to say failings, but like his past Open underwhelming performances, like the last 2 specifically, he's been in pretty much equally good form going into those and still didn't measure up well. Does that concern you that his form now it's tremendous. It's kind of equivalent to what it was entering those, and he still didn't grade out all that well.
No, not really.
Okay, cool. So that's fine then. That's the question I had. But
yeah. I mean, it sounds dismissive, but we can very easily overreact to, and we don't know necessarily without digging back, and we don't have shot link data. So I mean, we can look at all the traditional stats we want, but it's not going to tell us a very good story. Some people don't like shot link, but greens and regulation are not necessarily indicative of how close you were to the pin, things like that. So I don't want to get too bogged down in just the round by round scoring. So for me, I'm not going to look at that and say, no, I'm not in on Paul Casey.
Okay.
But compare him to someone like Tony Finau, where Casey's in great recent form. The recent Open form has been bad. You kind of flip those two for Finau. Right. Which do you prefer? I mean, it's a pretty close conversation. I mean, honestly, for me, it's going to be Finau just because the long-term form is better. But I know that you're taking my approach this week with a balanced lineup build. You can get Tony Finau, Paul Casey.
¿Por qué no los dos?
Yeah, like
I'm in. So I think that I like Finau in this range. If I go back to your original question of this range overall, I would say Scheffler is awesome. Definitely on board there. I would say Matty Fitz is great. I like Finau and I like Casey. And the one guy I am struggling on with is Berger because the around the green play is not great. And also he is traveling because he was playing the John Deere Classic. So you had travel with like questionable around the green play. I'm probably not going to wind up on Berger, even though I like everything else about him. So it's a good range. And I would say if I'm ranking them, it's probably Casey, Finau, Scheffler, Fitz, probably for me.
So you do have Casey first?
Yeah.
Okay. I would probably put Finau over Casey, but I would probably have Scheffler over Casey as well. That might be dumb, but I like what Scotty Scheffler's doing.
What about Scheffler versus Finau?
I think I have a lot of Tony Finau because he's just by his name and the fact that virtually everyone loves the guy, he's going to still be popular, but two straight missed cuts and you have all these other options. 2 missed cuts is just not indicative of like what to expect from a golfer when we have years of data that says otherwise. So Finau's my number 1 in this like 9.6 to 10.5 range.
Okay.
I feel pretty good with that, but I think Scheffler would be my number 2 because his ball striking is kind of leveled out, which is still leveling out at a very plus number, but the short game's trending up, which is what you really want to see for a young golfer.
Is a Scheffler Casey head-to-head too far for you?
I'll take that.
Okay. So you have Scotty Scheffler FanDuel points. I have Paul Casey FanDuel points.
Yeah, I'm gonna curse him now because I never win the head-to-heads.
What was last week's?
I don't remember, and I don't think I logged.
Okay.
Denny McCarthy and Andrew Putnam.
Don't want to know. So while you are logging the Casey versus Scheffler head-to-head, I'll talk to you about Brandon Grace. He is $8,800 and has back-to-back top 10 finishes. That's worth discussing. One of those top 10s for Grace was at a major. He finished 7th at the US Open last month, gained 13 strokes tee to green, lost 2.9 putting to miss out on the good finish there. But at the Memorial 2 weeks before, he actually finished 4th thanks to a combo of good putting and good tee to green play. Grace has just 1 missed cut since February. That came at the Players. He was 38th at the PGA Championship thanks to good short game play there. The tough part is that it's hard to be super optimistic about the short game continuing to be good here because bentgrass is easily his worst surface, and he ranks 114th in the field in that metric over the past 100 rounds. So I think there is a chance that Grace trends towards being pretty popular as a result of the short win odds that he has for his low salary. And I'd be okay missing out on him if that does wind up happening. With that said, though, I don't think that Grace is an outlandish recommendation, and I'm interested for sure. So I want to hear you talk about Grace and your thoughts on him this week.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at him because of the odds, but frankly, I don't see enough in the data. I mean, he's gained 0.6 on average in the past 5 opens. He's been, historically a pretty strong major player, so that's probably factored in a good bit. I mean, it's fine, especially for a value range, and I think it's a lot easier this week to narrow down the studs and pick your maybe 5 that you like if you're building multiple lineups and then rotate in the values and hope that you hit the right combinations. But for me, I don't think Grace is necessarily going to be there because the win odds are so short relative to the salary, although I will talk about Robert McIntyre later. So that's not the only reason.
Right. And it's interesting. And I think that it kind of goes back to what you talked about where like we might not see someone get super chalky this week because there's so many golfers, and that might help. But Grace, I agree, where if I were more convinced of it and there were more like overwhelmingly great data, I'd probably be there. But, for right now, I'm not quite seeing that. So let's talk about Lucas Herbert instead. $8,000 is his salary for this week. And you talked about the Scottish Open with regards to Rahm, but it's also pertinent in here with Herbert. What do you see there after a top 5 finish for Lucas Herbert heading into this week?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like Herbert wasn't on the radar when until I looked at the super recent form and saw not just the 4th place, like the T4 from the Scottish Open, but I mean that was a week after he won the Irish Open. Those came from really good putting results, but there was more to it. And again, this is something that I haven't brought up, but it's important to keep in mind. European Tour results are about like you can compare those to like Corn Ferry Tour results. Generally, it's about the same field strength, a little bit stronger for European Tour results, but like a win is not a PGA Tour win like it's not the same. It's not really even close. But he has had recent results on the PGA Tour, and he finished 18th at Memorial, 19th at the Travelers as well. And those 2 top 5s in the European Tour did come from great putting, but that's a big part of his game, and that's fine to see. There's a difference between putting well to finish well and doing nothing else well, and you're just putting well. That's not the case for Herbert. Like his past 4, so the 2 good European Tour finishes, the 2 top 20s on the PGA Tour. Those all came with good iron play, positive strokes gained approach numbers, positive strokes gained off the tee numbers. And I think that form is a little more recent. He was struggling a bit to start 2021, but overall, like it's a pretty fair salary for someone who's kind of doing a lot of things right. So again, I was not really in on Lucas Herbert until I looked at the current form for this section, so I'm kind of in. Did he pop for you at all?
Well, it's also not like it's just that event too. Like we've seen him in majors before. He's been fine. Like his first major was in 2018, the US Open, missed the cut, but then he was at the Open in 2018, finished 51st, made the cut at the PGA that year. He missed the cut at the PGA in 2020, but made it at the US Open last year. He made it at the PGA this year, didn't perform all that well, but he was good with the short game. And he's also young. We talk about that a lot with guys who've had recent gains is, okay, are they young enough where we can believe this is an actual change? And Herbert's 25. So I think it's pretty easy to talk yourself into it being legit. He's $8,000. If you want to offset Rahm's salary and allow yourself to bask in that mid-range, he offsets Rahm's salary almost entirely by himself. So I think that I'm good with it and I'm going to get there, and I'm having a hard time really pushing back. Like I don't want to go overconfident. I don't want to go heavy exposure.
Yeah.
But in terms of putting him on, 20% of my rosters. Yeah, I'm fine with that for sure.
Yeah. I think he's going to be just kind of a borderline core play at the salary. We have plenty of other options in the 8,000 range. I think the 8,000 range, almost top to bottom, has a little more value-based appeal than the 9,000 range, which is why I'm struggling a little bit to get super on board with just a balanced lineup, because I don't care for the low 9,000s that much. But Herbert, like you said, maybe he'll be popular by the time we get to Thursday, but he's going to go a long way toward either rostering Rahm or getting a second, possibly even third stud in your lineup. So I think that alone makes him super appealing.
Yep. I think that he is really interesting to me. I think that one caveat I would give to the balanced approach is I would like to be in the high 9,000 range and in the low 10,000 range, as opposed to using value plays to get there. So I guess balance might not be the right word for it, but top heavy maybe, but mid heavy.
It sounds more like tier 2.
Yes.
As opposed
I
to,
want to pepper tier 2 and tier 3. That's the right way to say it. Yes.
So, I mean, that has a lot of appeal, because you're going to miss out on, wherever you draw the line, like Rahm, Rory. I don't have a whole lot of interest in DJ, which is always scary, but Brooks is someone I'll probably talk myself into by Thursday, because how can you go wrong playing Brooks? Spieth, maybe Xander. It's if you just say maybe
Spieth was 11-6. That's not bad for a balanced build.
So if you lop off the top 4, which is Rahm, Rory, DJ, Brooks at 11-8 and above, and say Spieth, Xander, that's where you start at 11-6, 11-5, and get 3 golfers between effectively 97 in there, that's a pretty strong way to get some win equity in your lineups.
Yeah. Sometimes when we talk about having a balanced approach, it's in order to avoid the value plays. For me, it's in order to get more exposure to that mid-range. That's my intent for this week with going with a balanced approach. One guy who could be an exception to, I would say a mutual distaste to the low 9,000 range. Is Harry English, and who better to target in British Open Week than
Harry British?
Harry British. Harris English, really rough stretch at the beginning of the winter, but it does look like things are trending back up now. The obvious one was the win at the Travelers, but English was also third at the US Open. He gained 4.6 in approach and 4.4 around the green. English has now gained an approach in 4 straight events. He has gained around the green in 6 straight, and he's gained on the greens in 5 of the past 6. The good putting probably going to stick because English ranks 3rd in bentgrass putting the past 100 rounds. The lack of distance might matter a bit less on a not super lengthy course. If we look at the past year of play to dilute the issues he had over the winter, English ranks 17th in Data Golf's True Strokes Gain query. That seems pretty enticing at 9.2. So I agree with you that range overall is not very good. I would deem English as being one of the exceptions, though. I think that Brian Harman is in that discussion for me as well. Where do you sit in Harris English for this week?
So he is tied for 34th in salary, if I have everyone in the field, at least as of now. But when I combine my statistical model, which is like giving weights to the stats I think are most important this week, and his long-term adjusted form, I have him ranked 16th in the field.
Yeah.
So I think he's one of the best value plays of the week. And you'd really have to kind of convince me otherwise because he's just been very good for a long time. And again, had a cold streak, but that's not it. If that's not the end of his career, he's going to bounce back to like his baseline. And that's kind of
he's
where
already done that.
Yeah. So
I find no reason to be super upset with him here. I think that I mentioned Harman as being another guy I would be willing to consider in this low 9,000 range. But outside of that, it's pretty grim. I will defend Jason Kokrak.
Can we do it
until he folds with his pocket aces, pocket queens, pocket kings? But the around the green play is concerning for me this week.
Well, Kokrak's putting has been like off the charts lately, if I'm not mistaken.
He's the best putter on the planet, obviously. Jason Kokrak has never had issues putting. What do you mean?
Yeah, so over the past 50 rounds, he's 8th in strokes gained putting once adjusted for field strength.
Yeah.
I feel like this was an episode of the Rugrats when they were playing like mini golf and Who's the Dad, Stu, maybe?
Yeah.
He like had this putter that like did this like laser lineup thing, had like a scope on it or something.
I remember.
I feel like maybe Jason Kokrak found a way to implement that because he does have cards than he's allowed to have in a game of poker. So maybe like we gotta check out his putter for some technology.
We're gonna have to strip Jason Kokrak down and look for spider tack. We're gonna do all the cheating investigations in Jason Kokrak just to be safe. So to me, I guess if we're gonna add Kokrak in, the list is then English, Harman, Kokrak, and then really hesitant with everyone else in that range.
Can I do a?
Did I miss answer? Sorry, answer's 9-3.
Can I do an answer over Harman head to head then?
No, I like Answer. Answer's my player picks. I just forgot him.
That's right, because I couldn't.
Yeah, no, he's my player picks.
Well, yeah, just for what it's worth, you're up 21-10.
Don't mention bobble hats. I was ahead of you going into Sunday. Didn't end up that way.
That's only 15-12, although you're running out of time.
Yeah, I am. I think it's an okay range. There's not a lot of guys I want to use, and there's no one there I'm like, I want 40 to 50% exposure to, which means that if I'm going to keep that roster or that exposure limited, I have to inherently avoid that range a good amount of the time.
Yeah. So I was saying, like, when I was looking at golfers to talk about with current form, I was looking like who's got the best sort of really current form here. And I mean, Garrick Higo jumps out to a degree, but we talk about him a lot. But like, other than that, nobody really popped too much to me. So like, it's not the most appealing range.
Yeah, I agree. But English is definitely a guy I'm good to go to in this range. Let's transition now to take a look at what the bookmakers are saying. And obviously they are saying John Rahm locked to win this week. He's plus 750 at FanDuel Sportsbook. Nobody else shorter than 16-1. Massive, massive fall off there. The two golfers at 16-1 are Brooks Koepka and Rory McIlroy. Then you have Xander Schauffele, Justin Thomas, and Jordan Spieth at 18-1. Dustin Johnson is 22-1 before there is a second fall off down to the next year. Got Louis Westhuizen and Victor Hovland at 30-1. Patrick Reed and Patrick Cantley, the Patties, are 33-1. Bryson DeChambeau is 34-1. Then Shane Lowry, potentially still hungover from when he won the Open. Colin Morikawa, Tommy Fleetwood, Tyrrell Hatton around the top group. They are all 35-1. So we talked about Rahm earlier. Let's talk about the second group. If it's not Rahm, who is it going to be from a DFS perspective for you this week?
If it's not Rahm, it's going to be Xander. And if it's not Xander, probably going to be Spieth. I have a lot of FOMO with Spieth right now. But I don't have it quite so much with Rory. I definitely don't have it with DJ. I don't have it with JT at the Open. So it's going to be Xander and then Spieth. And it's very, very possible. And I think we talked about this the past every major week. I try to keep this in mind. But if you play Brooks Koepka, odds are come Thursday afternoon, you're not going to regret it. He's going to be
Right.
top 10. You're going to be well, he's going to make the cut. And then from there, who knows? But I don't want to forget about Brooks entirely.
Yeah, so I think if I were ranking them out, I actually have Spieth 1.
Give me a Spieth Xander head to head.
Okay, sure. Why not? It's fine.
I gotta get you to do some of them.
That's fine. I like Xander too, but I'll take it because it's action and I'm bored. So sure, I'll take that. It's a Monday. We're feeling frisky, so why not? We'll do that one. I would put Brooks second though, after Spieth, and then Xander.
Give me a Xander versus Spieth and Xander versus Brooks.
I'm not doing Brooks head to head. That's the stupidest format for Brooks Koepka. But I think that from a DFS perspective, it's what you said, where he can torch everybody, make you feel very good about your decisions. And if I regret it, the odds that I regret using Brooks Koepka are equally high to everyone else in the field. So I think you talked about FOMO with Spieth, the fear of getting burned, FOGB, with Brooks, I think is higher in our minds, but that's true for everyone. It's golf. It's highly volatile. So I'll take the downsides and be fine with it. So to me, it's Spieth 1, Brooks 2, Xander 3.
I mean, I wouldn't argue with that, but those are my top 3 outside of Rahm, in that 11, above 11,000 range.
Yeah. And I think it's fair. And that's why it's interesting for me for this week. So when you're not going Rahm, what's your overall thought? Are you okay going with the using value plays to pepper that second and third tier more often approach that I've been talking about?
So I generally always want to feel like all 6 of my golfers have a shot to win. You either don't get that in a major or you build literally you hug 10,000 as much as you can. I don't think I want to do that this week. I could build probably 1 or 2 lineups that are almost identical, being between 95 and 10,000, but that's it. There's not a whole lot of flexibility I don't love. Shane Lowry, for example, Justin Rose, definitely not. Even Adam Scott, I'm kind of over. But I think for me, I am going to have to embrace a little bit more volatility and go down toward the value range so that I can get back up and get, that the tier 2 heavy approach. I think we're both kind of on the same page with overall roster construction for this week.
I built while you were talking, because I always listen to you intently. Yeah. I built a lineup with Herbert in English, and it is stupid fun. And I think that if you have those 2 value plays, one of which being, maybe it's 2 guys in the high 8,000 range or 1 guy in the low 8,000, 1 guy in the low 9,000, you can just obliterate. We talked about Porque no los dos with Casey and Finau. It's Porque no los tres. It's everyone if you do that. And I think that to me is going to be my favorite build for this week, a build that I like more than the ROM-centric builds personally.
Yeah, while you were talking, I just built a Herbert English stack, and I loved my lineup, how it looked.
Awesome.
Now I was doing a bit where I didn't listen to you.
You didn't listen to me when you repeated what I said. I get it. Clever. Why did I let you on this podcast?
It didn't go over well, but it should have. I thought it was good.
I thought it was pretty funny. You would love your lineup if you did it, though.
Once I explain it, yeah. I mean, if Lucas Herbert makes, I'm gonna be waking up at like 3 a.m. on Thursday morning and just, where's Lucas Herbert? I don't know what the tee times are gonna be. But
you're playing this wrong. You don't realize the optimal way to play this. Never in DFS do we get to wake up to results outside of like West Coast stacks for like baseball, which only make me anxious. Because it's like going already, and I'm just like very anxious for the Open. Unless you're someone who wakes up to like actually watch it, which is awesome, good for you. I'm too old to do that, so I wake up and get to see a lot of results. That is like one of the most blissful experiences in.
You do always talk about this every year.
Yeah, you're like peeing in the morning on your phone naturally as you're peeing, and you get to check what happened overnight. There is nothing better than that. Find me one thing better than that from a DFS perspective. Find me one thing. You can't.
A 6 out of 6 lineup.
Yeah, but I won't know about that. And I don't get those. So like, I wouldn't know how that feels, Brandon.
I've never had a 6 out of 6 lineup. Here's who I love for this week.
Correct. Take my advice. Listen to our podcast. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Smash that like button.
Yeah, smash that like button. Subscribe, baby. But yeah, I think that's my favorite build for this week is getting in 2 value plays and then just obliterating those second and third tiers. We do have fun odds movement for majors because FanDuel posts the salaries early. They posted these Thursday, right at the tee off of the most recent event. So we do have some movement over the weekend. Which golfers' odds have moved the most recently based on the odds of FanDuel Sportsbook?
Yeah, so I pulled from, they've been out for a while because majors have been up for a bit, but I pulled, I believe Friday is what I'm comparing these to versus Monday afternoon. So we are recording a little bit early, not on Tuesday morning like we usually do, but golfers whose odds have shortened. I'm not going to go over who lengthened because that's not as indicative of anything really. John Rahm was 8.5 to 1. He is now 7.5 to 1, which is just insane for a field like this at a course that's going to play tough, but makes sense. Justin Thomas, surprisingly, 22 to 18. Patrick Reed, 41 to 33. That's a really interesting name because of the way that this course is going to play. Matt Fitzpatrick, Lee Westwood, both 42 to 40. Paul Casey, 41 to 40, actually. Scotty Scheffler, 50 to 45. Sergio Garcia, Brandon Grace, 65 to 60. Abraham Answer, 80 to 70. Jason Day, Harris English, 80 to 75. Lucas Herbert, 150 to 80. Ian Poulter, 100 to 80. And Ryan Palmer, 150 to 100.
The Herbert one almost obviously due to his performance this weekend. So that one makes sense. The Justin Thomas one, though, is like puzzling is what I would say. Like, obviously it's not because Justin Thomas isn't deserving of being 18 to 1, but like, I'm confused about why he specifically would be one of the guys shortening. The form is fine. History in opens, as you said, is whatever, but like, it's kind of there.
He was in it last week a bit at the Scottish Open, finished T8, but actually lost strokes with approach, which is really abnormal for him. Was really good with the wedges. Again, like, there's going to be a time, and like, we have so many great golfers that some of them are naturally going to go overlooked. I thought Justin Thomas would be overlooked this week. Sounds like maybe not, which is fine by me because I don't have a whole lot of interest in JT. Nothing against him, which is like, again, we talk extra time because I always have to say, I don't dislike Justin Thomas. I need to make that clear, but I just prefer other golfers. And that's kind of where I am with it this week with JT.
What about Patrick Reed? Because we talked about the 10,000 range a lot, and he's there at 10.6. I have Cantley over him, and Cantley's 10.7. But like, Reed makes sense too. So what are your thoughts on Patrick Reed?
Yeah, I like him because it's, going to play tough, and he's going to need to save par. He's just probably like the best. I have him in the 94th percentile and adjusted around the green play, but he's probably like the best around the green player that we have on the planet. And he can putt, like save par, that's really appealing. So I'm not building around Patrick Reed, but it's one of those where it's a big enough jump for me to go out of my way to get up from like 97-ish to get up to Patrick Reed, which I know is a lot, but that's bringing more appeal to someone like Lucas Herbert, guys in like the low to mid 8,000 compared to the guys in the low 9,000. I think that's, I should have had like a 2v2 pulled up. But I think something like Patrick Reed and Herbert versus like, I don't want to say Harris English because I like it, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I should have had a good 2v2 pulled up, but
no, I think that makes sense. And I think that if I'm going to be in this range a lot, I'd like to include Reed as being part of that rotation. He will not be the guy I go to most. Like that'll be Cantley. And I'd rather go Finau Casey as well. But like I will get to Reed just because I want to be in this range a lot. So I think he makes a lot of sense. Which lower salary golfers have odds stand out to you?
So Brandon Grace is 60-1 at 8,800. Robert Matt 5-1. He was 50-1. His salary is 8,500. Jason Day 75-1. Christian Bezaden-Hout, Phil Mickelson, Ian Poulter, Lucas Herbert 80-1. Alex Noren 90, and Ryan Palmer 100.
And we'll talk about McIntyre later on. So the discussion on that will be imminent. But first, let's talk about the weather for this week. And that can be a big topic often for the Open. This week doesn't seem to be as bad, though, because things look pretty tame this week. Wind speeds hover around 15 miles per hour both Thursday and Friday. Doesn't seem like there are big wind shifts between the morning and afternoon, which means that we don't have a lot of appeal in stacking tee times right now. There also is not any precipitation currently in the forecast, which is good. The weekend looks even a bit calmer from a wind perspective with no precipitation. So I find that all interesting, and I find that reassuring personally. I know Bubba Watson was hoping for some rough weather, he said, when he had to withdraw because of a close contact. He's not going to get it, doesn't seem like. So to me, I feel like we can play things pretty straight here. Any deviations for you based on a 15 mile per hour forecast for Thursday, Friday?
No, I think it's going to be just a little too unpredictable from that standpoint, and probably not enough. It's just going to be the right process, which I think is the best all-around golfers we can get and guys who can avoid bogeys.
Well, why don't you talk to me, Brandon, about those best overall process plays as we move into our player picks for the Open Championship in 2021. Starting off with the upper range, Brandon, who stands out to you this week on FanDuel?
Well, obviously Jon Rahm, but I'm going to go with a mystery man here. See if you can guess who this is.
You're going to make me guess?
Yeah.
Okay.
This golfer is the only golfer in the field to rank in the 85th percentile or better in all 4 adjusted strokes gained categories over the past year. So that's off the tee, approach, around the green, and putting. 85th percentile or better, adjusted for field strength, adjusted for recency. Only one guy can say he does that. Any guesses?
Well, if not for a recent bad string of off the tee play, it would have been Cameron Tringale, obviously. Good golly, Cam Tringale. But he's fallen off the tee. So I'm going to guess it's not him, unfortunately. Shout out to Cameron Tringale, though, because he's the best.
Correct.
Probably Xander?
It's Xander.
Oh, wow. Shocker.
I mean, like, that's the thing is I know I play Xander a lot, especially in majors, but
it doesn't really bite you. So, like, why not keep doing it?
Like, yeah, so you missed the cut at the PGA, which is actually his worst major pretty easily, but that's kind of an outlier because he's had 10 top 20 finishes in his past 13 majors. That's insane. He's also been good specifically at Open Championships, gaining 1.7 strokes per round, finishing 20th, second, and 41st. Was in the mix last week at the Scottish Open. Like, Jon Rahm's number one. He's a lock in cash games. He is 1,000% going to be in my bobble hat lineup against you. But Xander is the first place I'm looking outside of Rahm.
I'm considering not going Rahm in cash just because I get a lot of salary savings, and like that does matter in cash games. So
that feels too difficult for me to do.
I don't know. I think the salary savings are enticing enough. I think that like if you can get to him easily, cool, do it. But like I feel so good about the 10,000 range. I also want additional exposure to it from a safety perspective. So I might skip over him. I still want to get to 40%.
Please do. Please do.
Yeah, I might. Why not? We'll see. But the guy I might go to if I skip over Ramen cash games is Jordan Spieth. I have not always been a big Spieth guy, as long-time listeners of the podcast know, but it's impossible to keep denying his form. He's, I think, undersalated at 11-6. As you mentioned, he's traditionally done well in opens, even when the form was off, but now he's back. He has gained at least 5 strokes tee to green in 5 of the past 6 measured events. That does include all 3 majors in this span. He didn't get the great finishes to show for it at the US Open or the PGA Championship, but he gained 6.2 and 8.2 strokes tee to green in those 2 events. So his play was very on, even when the fields got tougher. Spieth ranked 2nd behind Jon Rahm in true strokes gained over the past 6 months per Data Golf. He's a $700 discount. That's a lot. So I just say sign me up for Spieth. I'll take the discount, pepper that mid-range more. That's not an anti-Rahm thing. It's I think Spieth is undersalaried thing, and I can't get to both for a cash game, so I'll just take Spieth.
I mean, Spieth has the irons, wedges, and putter going on. So long as he does not find himself over all the mounds and in the everything, he's going to be fine. I love Spieth this week. I just don't prefer him over Xander.
That's fair. But I can understand that for sure. But again, Xander's great too. So no real pushback for me there. Our next 3 picks are all, or actually our next 4 picks are all, next 5 picks are talking about that really good mid-range and the guys we want exposure to, and the reason why we are inclined to try to live in that range as often as possible, whether it be via balance or using value plays to get back up there. So Brandon, who is someone you are turning to in that range often?
Tony Finau. I think he'll get a little bit slept on just because of the 2 straight missed cuts, and I think that leads to overreactions. Major winners, which I'm not calling a win, so I know Jim will guarantee that I said Finau wins, but that's not what I'm saying. Major winners aren't always in like flawless form leading in. I just looked at that to start major season. Just doesn't really, it's not a must. Now, the real issue is that those missed cuts stem from poor ball striking, and that's not ideal. But we know the long-term form from Finau is that he's one of the best tee to green golfers that we have in golf. His other missed cuts lately have been from weak putting, which is a very fair criticism of Tony Finau's game and upside and floor. But overall, he is in the 92nd percentile in adjusted strokes gained tee to green. We know he's great in majors. Missed the cut at the US Open, which I get, but 12 top 20 finishes in his past 21 majors. And at the British Open, Finau has finished 18th, 27th, 9th, and 3rd.
There's that word again. You said the B word. You said
British.
It. That's not a hairy British. I'm not sure if I can actually do this. But anyway, yeah, Finau's great. No pushback here. I will be there a lot just behind Casey in that range, but I also like to get a little bit higher than that. Go to Patrick Cantley at 10-7 for this week. He ranks 3rd behind Rahm and Spieth in true strokes gained over the past 6 months, and he perfectly fits this build that I want with peppering these ranges. Cantley ranks 9th off the tee the past 50 rounds. He is 23rd in approach, 6th around the green. He is also 18th in bent grass putting, so well-rounded there. Not Xander. No one is, but hey, he's close. Cantley hasn't always translated that in the majors, but he was top 10 in 2019 at both the Masters and the PGA Championship. He has been 15th and 23rd in the most recent 2 majors this year. And I have faith that Cantley can buck the mediocre major history with how well he has played this year. And at 10-7, I want both him and the salary relief that he gives me. So Cantley to me at 10-7 grades out really well. Brandon, what are your thoughts on Patrick Cantley at the Open?
Cantley might be my favorite win bet this week.
Okay.
Overall, just at the number.
He's one of mine. Not to spoil the whole section, but he's one of mine.
Yeah, and I love him. I love his FanDuel salary. He is a standout play to me in the 10,000 range. Majors in general should bring out the best in Patrick Cantley because he's such a good scrambler. He's so good at avoiding bogeys. 96th percentile in both of those over the past 100 rounds, according to Fantasy National. So, like, Cantley and Xander kind of go hand in hand for me when it comes to majors. Yes, Xander has done a lot better, but Cantley a lot lower salaried, all things considered, and form's good. So Cantley, one of my favorite plays of the week.
I mean, they go hand in hand because they check the same boxes and that they're well balanced. And that's what we want for majors. Really tough courses, really tough fields. They both fit that. So I think that they should go hand in hand there. Let's move down to the mid-salaried range and talk about some guys with a little extra motivation to try to win the Open Championship, one of whom is Matt Fitzpatrick. Brandon, $9,900. What do you see with him for this week?
Yeah, both of my guys are in the upper 9K range, as you alluded to. I would say I want to make sure that we're really good with Harris English this week. He's not in our player picks, but I think if we didn't talk about him already, he would have made it for one of us, if that's fair. So Fitzpatrick, the major history kind of started off better, and now it's just okay, but it still includes 4 straight made cuts, and you cannot hate a made cut in a major. It's going to help get you a 6 out of 6 lineup, and a 6 out of 6. It has to be a really outlier lineup. First of all, to be a 6 out of 6, but to be a 6 out of 6 and not be good. So I'm not hating on any made cuts in majors. And the long-term form for Fitzpatrick is good for this specific test at Royal St. George's, which should play really difficult. He was on a really hot streak earlier this year. That's cooled off, but there's just a lot to like for the setup of something playing close to maybe 5 under is the winning score, 3 to 5 under. Fitzpatrick's 87th percentile in bogey avoidance, 97th percentile in good drives gained over the past 100 rounds. Finished runner-up last week at the Scottish Open because of a hot putter, but that's within his range. He's a good putter. He's a good scrambler. The irons are always not bankable, but that's a little bit more forgivable this week, even though I talked about hitting greens in regulation. But if you can do other stuff well, you're still in the mix.
So you probably have this on your sheet, so just don't look. Put your hand up. Where do you think Matt Fitzpatrick ranks in strokes gained off the tee the past 50 rounds?
I think he's actually quite good because he's so accurate.
But where?
So over the past 50, where does he rank?
Yeah, among golfers in this field.
20th?
10th. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Given that the distance is not there. But he grades out so well from how good he is there. That's what we want for this week, is someone who can gain strokes off the tee without gaining distance. And Fitzpatrick does that. So I had him, we didn't include him in the discussion between Scheffler, Finau, and Casey. We probably should have, though. I think that he's right there with those guys. I think he's awesome. I feel I know I'm talking about a lot of guys in this range I need to get to, but that just kind of speaks to the fact that I just want to be in this range a lot.
Yeah, to me, though, once you get to Scheffler at 97, then it drops off.
Correct.
So we would have naturally a lot of names here because I think it's right before that drop off. So I guess really 97 with Scheffler up to Cantley at 10. Well, I like Hovland too and Morikawa, but 9-7 to 10-7 is going to be pretty. If those guys, if 3 of those guys finish top 6,
which could happen,
that's going to change everything.
Right. Exactly. So I like that a lot. I will stick with Paul Casey, my favorite guy, though, in this range. And usually we go mid-salaried is 10,000 and lower, but it's our podcast, our rules. And so let's talk about Paul Casey here. His history of the Open, as alluded to, is not great, but I still want to get a lot of him at 10-3. Casey is another guy with great recent form. He ranks 4th in true strokes gained over the past 6 months. A big part of that is what he's done in these tougher fields, because he was 7th at the US Open. He was 4th at the PGA. He gained more than 10 strokes tee to green in both those. It also does help that the putting surface is bent grass, because Casey's best surface is bent grass, and he ranks 37th there the past 100 rounds. Casey's top 10s in those majors came despite losing on the green both times. And I think that what that means is, even if the greens are not super kind to him, he can still have a high floor. And if he sinks his putts, which he can do on bent grass, his ceiling is great too. So I like Casey a lot at 10-3. Any final thoughts for you on Paul Casey?
Like him a lot. Not my favorite in this range, but have nothing bad to say about Paul Casey.
One guy you had above him is Scotty Scheffler. That is our head-to-heads. Talking about Scheffler right now.
Yeah, the major history for Scheffler is kind of short because of his career and his age, but it's still really good. 5 straight top 20 finishes, 3 top 10s, including 2 straight top 10s. Now, this will be his first Open Championship, which is a little bit concerning. It's not something that's going to get me off of Scotty Scheffler. But for me, there aren't a whole lot of question marks, and he's not nearly on the level of Xander in terms of his balanced approach, but he's 78th percentile in adjusted strokes gained around the green, 17th percentile in scrambling. So that's a big discrepancy that I saw this week. So scrambling is a fine stat, but don't overinflate it this week. And with Scheffler, if you look back at his trajectory in all four of the strokes gained stats, we know that the driver's always been there. The irons have pretty much always been there, but the wedges and putter were lagging, and now they're trending up, but he hasn't lost the ball striking. And so that's a really great combination for me this week. So Scheffler, my favorite play in the below 10,000 range for sure.
Yeah, I think that I want to use Scheffler for sure. I just hope he finishes behind Casey. I want that head-to-head win, but he makes a lot of sense to me as well. Mentioned Harris English as being one of the low 9,000 guys we like. Another guy I like, and I think you like, is Abraham Answer. You like him too,
yep.
Right?
Yep.
Cool. He's 93, and he is a liability around the greens. That's why, we talked about how I like some guys in this range, like Kokrak, English, and Answer. And that's the reason why I don't want to go more than 20 to 30% an Answer, because it's a legitimate downside for him. Everything else though is very good.
No.
What?
He's not a legitimate downside. It's not his strength.
He's 99th there the past 50 rounds.
According to Fantasy National? He is 67.
He's at negative 0.06 on Data Golf's adjusted true strokes gained.
Over the past 50 rounds.
Past 6 months.
Past 50 rounds, he's 67th with a positive 0.01.
67th isn't good though, and he's been.
But
worse than that over
you said
a
it's a
long
negative.
term.
You said it's a negative.
It is a negative compared to his other stuff. He's really good elsewhere. So it's a negative.
There's a plus sign, so it's not a negative. I just wanted to
it's
point
negative 0.06. How is that plus?
It's a positive 0.01 if you sort by the last 50 rounds.
Get out of here. We like him. Why are we arguing? We both like him. He ranks 14th in strokes gained off the tee, despite he's like Fitzpatrick in that sense. Not long, but he gains strokes off the tee. Ranks 11th in approach. Bent grass, very good surface for him. 99th around the green on data or on Fantasy National the past 50 rounds, but that's still okay. And it does make him a miscut risk, but that's fine. That's true for everyone in this range, and I'll still use him. He was 8th at the PGA Championship, 13th at the Masters in November, the November Masters. I don't know. Weird. I don't know. Whatever. He was 13th in that Masters. So he's done well in majors, areas where you do want to emphasize a good around the green play. He's $9,300. I can live with that risk that Answer presents if we deem it as a risk, which Brandon seems to not do.
I mean, it's not a strength, but it's not as bad as it could be.
No,
it's not also aggressively
good.
Negative.
It's not good.
No, but I mean, it's not horrible. It's not Emiliano Grillo level.
Okay, so
we love Answer. We love English.
Would you deem Joaquin Neiman's around the green play as being a negative
over the past year?
No. I'm just asking in general. Would you deem that to be a negative?
You're trying to trap me.
Yes, I am.
I would say no. It's probably about neutral.
Get out of here. Talk to me about your value plays. Who do you like in the value range?
Someone with great wedge play, Alexander Noren or Alex Noren, or whichever one in my spreadsheet I don't have him as. That's what he's listed as.
Correct.
I change his name so much in my name database. So despite the X lookup ruiner, I still like Noren this week at 8,600. Just an elite short game for him. That should help him get out of trouble at Royal St. George's. 91st percentile bent grass putter. Has finished 6th, 17th, 11th the past three Open Championships with 4 straight made cuts at the event. And his driver and irons are actually trending up long term, which he's older, so that's not necessarily something that I'm expecting to bank on. But seeing positive improvement long term is very welcomed. And I like the kind of semblance of safety. Nobody's going to be safe below 9,000, but I think Noren is one of my favorite plays, if not my favorite play, below 9,000.
I was very close to having him as a player pick as well, so I agree and think that he is a definite rotation option down here. Brandon, would you deem Corey Connors around the green play to be a negative?
No, Corey Connors is a positive everywhere, always.
Okay, well, you're not taking my bait. Anyway, he's better than Nance over the past 6 months. Anywho, I think that Corey Connors is a risk there too, but I still want to use him for this week. He's done well in majors recently, despite the bad short game, and that to me is encouraging here. $8,700. The major finishes since the November Masters for Connors are 10th, 8th, 17th, and a miscut. The miscut was at the U.S. Open. That was because he lost 4.1 strokes on the greens. That could happen. That could happen again this week for sure. He still has bad weeks every now and then. But the overall baseline of the putting has gotten better for Connors. And we know he can finish top 10 as long as he treads water in the short game. He ranks top 5 in both off the tee and approach play the past 50 rounds. He ranks 19th in true strokes gained over the past 6 months, and that accounts for the bad short game. That's just total strokes gained. He ranks 9th there. 19th. I will have a very hard time not buying into Connors at 8-7. Brandon, I would understand if you had a hard time getting here, though, given that Connors does have some legitimate red flags. So what are your thoughts on Corey Connors for this week?
Yeah, I'm not going to get there myself, I don't think. I just prefer some other golfers. I think he's a very fine play overall. Okay. I don't think it's necessarily the best course fit for him, where the ball striking is going to help, but the short game itself is not anything I can feel confident in. It's one thing if he were, problematic with the wedges, but a good putter, but he's not. He's a terrible putter as well.
Terrible nowhere. He's the best. Corey Connors guaranteed to win this week. Brandon, who else do you like in this value range?
I am going to stick with Robert McIntyre. I think Lucas Herbert's, again, really, really intriguing now. But McIntyre is 8,500 on FanDuel. Now 65-1, but that's still kind of an outlier if you compare the odds to the salary. I think he's a good play. He's probably going to be more popular than he deserves to be, because the iron play is just close to like baseline, according to Data Golf, which does include European Tour stats. Not really a plus putter necessarily. There's upside because he's such a big hitter. 18th at the Scottish Open last week, 35th at the US Open with positive tee to green in both negative putting in both. Did finish 6th at the 2019 Open Championship. So McIntyre, someone else I will be sprinkling in pretty heavy in the value range.
So I'm giving you a massive edge here.
Okay.
Do you want to do a McIntyre versus Connors head-to-head?
How's that a massive edge?
Well, because McIntyre, from an outright perspective, McIntyre 65-1.
That's not. That's
is
not
like 11,000 to 1.
That's not how this. That's not how this works, because Corey Connors has been better over the past 6 months than Robert McIntyre.
Okay, then take my head-to-head.
No.
What? You said you didn't like Connors, but you're like McIntyre, but you won't take my head-to-head?
Correct. You turn down my head-to-heads all the time.
Yeah, because I use logic and facts, and you're using spite.
Let's do it.
No, don't let me talk you into it. Don't do that. Don't do that. No.
Hey, man, it's a volume game at this point. We're running out of weeks. I gotta get some wins.
Okay, fair enough. I'm not going to get to McIntyre personally, but I get it. So that makes sense. So you're not on Connors. I'm not on McIntyre. Can I interest you in a Guido Emiliosi?
You probably could.
Okay, so let's talk about him. We talked about him and the form after the U.S. Open, but I think the Travelers was really helpful in bolstering the appeal for Emiliosi. In that one, Emiliosi backed up the good approach play. He did it again. Gained 3 strokes there, but he also gained on the greens. That was the one area where he didn't beast out at the U.S. Open. Over the past 6 months, Emiliosi is just 60th in true strokes gained. That is behind a lot of other dudes in the salary tier. But if you look at the past 3 months, he does move up. He is near guys like Webb Simpson, Kevin Streelman, Tony Finau. He's not in their range, obviously, but he's in good company if you shorten it to more recent form. It's been in tougher fields. So it could be risky because we're not sure if this surge will stick, but he's $8,600 and I'm intrigued. So what are your thoughts on Guido Emiliosi this week?
Yeah, so he's 11th in total true strokes gained average over the past 20 rounds. It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Better than Reed, not as good as Harris English though. Just keep that in mind. But
no one is. Yeah,
Emiliosi's totally fine for me. This is just another name down here that there's appeal. And he is not going to be flawless, not going to be safe. Don't lock up everything you have on Emiliosi, but I think it's going to be a week where we just finalize the studs we like most and then rotate in these values.
Yeah, I think that he'll be one of the guys I use when doing so. I mentioned before that Patrick Cantley is one of my win picks for this week. He is 33-1 right now at FanDuel Sportsbook. I'm going to think about my second one here. Rory did lengthen 18-1 while we were talking. So if you want to get that there. Obviously, no one else wants it. So if you want it, you can. But what are your win picks for this week based on the odds at FanDuel Sportsbook?
I love how I won the bobble hat, and then you take the first pick and take one of the guys I was.
No, you can take him too. Go ahead.
I know, but it's not fun for content.
Do it.
It's not fun.
You're doing it for the content.
It's not fun.
It's
not fun.
Content.
It's not funny. Well, I'll go. Obviously, Xander then.
Yeah.
Because he outperforms his sportsbook odds in my win simulations. So I'm gonna go Xander. You taking Patrick Cantley? That's the first time. No, I know it's not.
Wait, what?
No, I thought it was the first time you took Cantley, but it wasn't.
Definitely can't be. There's no way. Who is your second guy? I'll let you pick your second one before I go for the hashtag content.
I'm considering Morikawa.
Okay.
Despite the fact that it's scrambling heavy, I'm considering Hovland, Fitzpatrick, Scheffler. I think I will go Morikawa though for the sake of this because I think he's undervalued based on his win odds. I don't think he's the best FanDuel play, but I think for an outright win, hard to hate on Morikawa because he does convert. Okay,
so you have Xander and Morikawa, and I will go with Patrick Cantley and Jordan Spieth as a result of what we discussed before with the overall play being so good, with the short game likely to be stellar this week. Good history in the past in the Open, even when he hasn't been in great form. He's in great form now. So I'll go with Jordan Spieth and Patrick Cantley versus your Xander Schauffele and Colin Morikawa. Brandon, any final thoughts for you before we send people off to set their lineups for the Open Championship?
Major week gives you a lot of flexibility. So just pick the guys you want because it's
pick
really
the good golfers, baby.
It's really hard to go wrong. We're not big on Bryson or JT or Dustin, but if you and Rory, if you see reasons to be, go for it because they're still the game's best, just not fitting our process necessarily.
Yeah, none of those guys are going to be indefensible. So if you have a strong inclination towards them based on your process, go for it for sure. That is all that we have here for today, but plenty more Open content coming up here on the FanDuel multimedia sphere this week. I don't know the way to phrase it. We have Covering the Spread tomorrow. We're going to have some guy named Brandon Gadula on as a guest for that, breaking down his favorite bets for the Open Championship. That is on the Covering the Spread podcast feed tomorrow. And then also tomorrow, Brandon will have his PGA Q&A. Now, that is a half an hour later than usual this week because there's no MLB. So we're going to push Brandon back to 4 p.m. and have him talk from 4 to 4:30 about your questions for DFS and betting. So if you have any questions about the Open Championship for DFS or betting, make sure you are subscribed to the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, or Twitter pages. Get your questions in on Tuesday, 4 p.m. Eastern to talk to Brandon there, and also check out Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. Brandon, if people have questions for you before 4 p.m. on Tuesday, where can people find you on Twitter?
I'm at Gadula13, GDULA13.
And I am at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcasts. Make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. No baseball until Friday with Tom Vecchio because I'm out on Friday. We will have NASCAR on Thursday. Believe UFC this week once again. Austin Swaim, awesome with his picks this past week. Helped me win some money. So check out Austin this week once again for UFC as well. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck to you with the Open Championship. Enjoy your morning pee while you check out the results. And we'll talk to you once again next week. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire.